So I'm Ryan Florence, my business partner Michael Jackson, ha ha ha, and I run a company called React Training. This is our website, and you guessed it, this is a marquee. I used the platform, yes. That's the only element it gives me that's worth it. But, Div's pretty good too. I think we're on like React 13, the O.13 here. You don't have to upgrade, everybody. You can actually just like, if the website's working, don't touch it. No, we're really excited. We just launched on Monday our new online course called Advanced React.js. We've taken the best of all of our workshops and crammed it into an online course. It's all self-paced. Those of you who won the raffle, if you can't take off work tomorrow or Thursday and Friday to attend, we can either give you a voucher for another one later or to this online stuff. And then just one more quick thing about our company. We have a blog at cdb.reacttraining.com. Component did blog. It's kind of between Michael and I, there are 7 children, so we got to make those kinds of jokes. We have 8 workshops right now on our website. And women, if you come here to our blog, you can see a little blurb that we have, kind of in response to that Google kerfuffle junk that I think is garbage. All the women in here, we want you here, we love you, we're glad that you're here. And so we're offering half off to women to our workshops. And we sell these things out, so like that hurts my wallet. It's people have been like, oh, that's a marketing point. I'm like, no, I'm losing money doing this. So we care about that a lot. Okay, so you aren't here to hear about my company. You're here to hear a little bit about React, and particularly React Router. I kind of want to go back in time a little bit and share a bit of my history, my coming to React. Notice the date here, 29th of May 2013. Anyone know what that day was? Anybody? Come on, this is React Church history, folks. This is the day that it was open sourced. May 2013. I was big into Ember at the time, and I went to the website, and then within like 15 minutes, I created this little JS bin to very smugly react to React. And I was pretty proud of myself. Here's my Ember code. At the time, there was no such thing as Ember components. That's something that Yehuda Katz and I talked about quite a bit back when I was doing Ember, and ended up with this thing called Ember Control. And then I had this little thing that I called component to make these components. But anyway, these were the demos, sorry that got really loud, on the React website. And so I redid the demos in like 10 minutes as fast as I could, and then put it on Twitter, and then look how cool I am. So I was being a little bit smug on that. I hate being smug. I try really hard not to be anymore. Sebastian and Christoph Boher, I said his last name wrong. I didn't even try Sebastian's. Mark Boga. The two of them were really involved with Mood Tools. In fact, the Mood Tools team kind of taught me how to program. That's when I got into web development back in the Mood Tools days, and they were awesome. And then I didn't talk to them for a long time, and then React shows up, and then my friends are back. And so I sent this message to Sebastian saying, hey, this React thing looks just like Ember.vue. Like, what did I miss? And they didn't reply. So I sat in the dark for a year. A month later, I'm like, hey, anybody using it? And everyone's like, nah, nobody uses Facebook tech. I mean, that was true at the time. But hip-hop PHP, no thanks. Although we used Cassandra, that came from Facebook, right? I don't know. And then, a few months later, okay, almost a year later, in March, I started to kind of be interested in React. I hadn't done anything with it yet, but I started to kind of see like, oh man, I'm trying to do this component stuff. I'm trying to share it with all of our teams across all of our apps and trying to open source stuff, and it's really hard to distribute these components. And I was looking at the React component model and thinking, that looks like exactly what I want. Oh, not there yet. And then I was asked to speak at JSConf 2014, and it was going to be on Ember, Backbone, and Angular, and it was called Angular Bone. That was the name of the talk. And then they sent me an email like 2 or 3 weeks before the conference. They said, hey, would it be okay if you also talked about Polymer and React? I was like, okay, 30 minutes, 5 frameworks. Gives me like 4 minutes each. Sure. So that was the first time I actually sat down and worked with React. So I went to the tutorial. Anyone remember the JSX transformer? You know all the stuff that you do today with Webpack and Babel and all that kind of junk? And originally, the tutorial just said, put the script tag in to this thing on Facebook CDN, and then do script type text JSX, and then it all just worked. And so that's how I wrote React for a good month or two. And man, an hour into using React, I was like, this is it. I want to use this for everything now. But I had just barely migrated most of our teams over to Ember. And by just barely, I mean it was 8 months in, and no one had shipped anything still. But we were committed. So I didn't want to be that guy, you know, like, hey everybody, here's another new shiny thing. Even though we aren't even quite successful yet with this one, let's try another. So anyway, I didn't try to get too excited about it at work, but one thing that we really, really loved from Ember, and this is recorded, right, so if you're going to watch this online, Ember folks, Ember's a lot different today than it was back then, and it's a lot better. But anyway, what we really loved from Ember was the router. Ember's router was pretty transformative, I think, for the entire front-end ecosystem. It was the first router that really seemed to just work really well. We used to mess around with Backbone's router a lot and try to get that thing to orchestrate our apps, but there were still a lot of problems with the back button. Lots of apps still broke the back button, even using Backbone's router. And Ember's was the first one that I used that didn't break my app sometimes. Like I could just give it my routes and then it worked. And so as I was thinking about, okay, how do I pitch my team on using React? We absolutely have to have a router. And so I poked around the internet, didn't find anything I liked a whole lot. Mind you, this is like only after an hour of using React. Like I was already here, like, okay, how do I sell my team? And so I tried to make my own little router and kind of base it off of Ember's. So right here, this is a year later in May of 2014. So May 2013, I'm super smug and I'm like, oh, React is dumb. And then 1 year later, because Sebastian didn't reply to my tweet, I found him looking at it, and in 70 lines, I made this funny little React router thing. These are making, I mean, the design is awful, but these are making real AJAX calls, and like, this is the thing, this is my little 70-line router. Let me show it to you. So this is the original, the OG router. Had this ridiculous thing called URL. This whole thing is now called history. It's a package on NPM. It's not 10 lines of code anymore. But all this stuff ended up being a thing called history. But for now, it was just, hey, listen to the URL, the hash change. Notice this is just an object. This was back when mixins were cool, before the blog post was written. And had a couple of lifecycle hooks. We just subscribe. When it unmounts, we unsubscribe. We try to match the child route. Then borrowed a little thing from Ember, the outlet. Here's how we push a URL, just change the location hash. I didn't know that there was a React.children, like .map and stuff like that. I didn't know that existed yet, so I made my own little 2-array thing. There was no, there's now string.prototype.starts with, which is super cool, but that wasn't there, so I had to make my own. Check for some matches, match the child route, here's a link, not accessible at all, it's garbage. 120 lines. And then here's what the app looked like. So I mixed in routed, and then I rendered a route. That's confusing for people who say route as root. But anyway, you're wrong, by the way. Just kidding. I try so hard when we go to like other countries, like in Australia, I was trying so hard to say route and to say kilometers instead of miles. Yeah, check that out. So I just had some components, and then when their path matched, React Router, or routed as it was called, would render them. And so this is like hours 2 and 3 with React while I was messing with it, and I could not believe how quickly I could come up with something like this, like design an API like this that was plugged into the hash change and worked. I'm not that great of a programmer. React makes me like 11 times better than I am without it. So that's kind of where it started, and then Michael and I started talking on Twitter. We were just acquaintances, and he was using Ember too, but he started getting interested in React, and I showed him this code. He was like, this is kind of cool, can I help you out with that? I said, sure. And then 2 days later, everything was rewritten. For the better, because this was just like, slap some code on the screen, see if it could work, and then Michael really brought the software craftsmanship to it, and did a great job of cleaning up that code and turning it into a real library. So we put it up on GitHub, and I don't know if this is good or bad, but people started using it. And I wasn't even using React at work. Like, this was just I'm dinking around on the weekends and at night, put the kids to bed, work on React Router, and people started shipping apps with it, and I wasn't even using it. So we had to try to learn React really quickly, because we didn't know React either. All right, it was brand new to us. I wrote this code my 3rd hour of using React. So we made a lot of mistakes along the way. Before I talk too much about those mistakes, let's talk about why we like React generally. One of the big reasons we like it, who here has used handlebars or mustache.js before? You may not know, Michael implemented the JavaScript version of mustache.js. Wrote that a few years ago. Who here has used Angular? Okay, I saw more hands for mustache, so we'll do that one. In handlebars, there's this thing called each, and you can do like each taco in tacos. Somewhere you have tacos. Not in this template though, right? The template doesn't define anything, the template only consumes things. So somehow we threw some tacos into the template. Burritos might be better, they won't fall apart if you throw them. And I always want to pull I really want to do that E, but anyway. So for each burrito, we could have a UL around this thing, right? And then we do an LI, and then it's like burrito. Okay. Templates are kind of weird. They're like a programming language, right? Each, what is that? That's iteration. These pipe things, we could say like upcase, right? We call those filters sometimes. Handlebars doesn't have that. Angular has those. Handlebars has I don't know what new handlebars looks like. It's totally different. But we had these kinds of helper things. They called them helpers there, and then we called them filters over in Angular land. These were global functions that you could kind of, I don't know if the right word is inject, but they're global functions that you could put into your templates. And so this right here, this is syntax for calling a function. So we've reinvented loops, and we've reinvented calling functions. What if we wanted let's switch to Angular now. old Angular. I don't know new stuff. I stopped learning everything after React. I had a child after I started React. Don't know his name. It did ng repeat, right? So we did ng repeat, burrito in burritos, and then I can't remember what we do here. We do like burrito. Now, what if I wanted the index for some reason? Maybe I'm doing a credit card thing, right? And this is these are not burritos; these are months, month in months. And I want to do. You ever use those credit card forms and they don't give you the number of the month for the expiration date, and you're like, it's not in the month of my birthday, so how am I supposed to know what the month number is? So I'm like, okay, May, June, July, August, 8. So we want that index in there. Well, in Angular, it's that. Oh, there we go. Where did that come from? Someone just mouthed magic to me. It's not magic, it's just code. Yeah. It's something new, it's something you gotta learn. When we got to React, we did it like this, right? We said, come in here and we take our months and we map them. And where do we get an index in JavaScript? Right there. How do we call a function in JavaScript? We just do. This is why a lot of us really like React. We get to express our UI with JavaScript. Some people get upset when we say just JavaScript, but we mean that. We mean it. We get to just use JavaScript. We get to define our months right here in this file. If we want that filter thing, like this upcase thing, we don't have to do that. If we had, what could we do? If we had leftpad, if that guy hadn't deleted it from the internet, we could use that there. It's just JavaScript. That's what we mean by that. And we find a lot of productivity in React because of that. We don't have to switch gears. We have to learn this weird JSX thing, but it's not too bad once you figure it out. And then from there, it's all just stuff that you already know. We don't have to go asking React for things. How do I iterate? How do I call functions? How do I filter through things? How do I reduce an array? How do I keep something sorted? We don't have to ask React any of that stuff. React just expresses the UI from our JavaScript. So we like React because it doesn't reinvent JavaScript. We could use everything that JavaScript has. And if you, like, decorators are showing up, we can use decorators. By the way, they're completely changing as of like yesterday or today. So you might want to go check that out and maybe stop using them. No. Some people are like, from my cold dead hands. We did this with React Router. So you saw my first router here. It was all just rendered right there. Our version 4 looks a lot like this, actually. But we went down a crazy road with React Router. You can server render in React, right? And so people were and if you're server rendering, you need to get your data. And in React, you can't get your data while you're rendering. Right? You have to get the data first and then render. And so on the server, this posed a big problem for us because your URL didn't just determine which components to render, but it also determined what data should be rendered in those components. So kind of by accident, we ended up having these things called route, and they were inside of here. And that's where they were at first, and we would render them. But then because of the server rendering constraint, they kind of accidentally ended up outside of rendering. And when they came outside of rendering, they were no longer actually components. We actually just stripped their props and then created these objects out of them so that we could statically match your URL, and then we would hand you a list of the routes that matched. So we weren't actually in React anymore. A lot of people always ask us, hey, why do you have these weird JSX routes? I don't like that API at all. And it was like, well, they used to be components, but yeah, you're right, that is weird, but Oh well, we moved him over there. And then we took over rendering in React Router. So we had to reinvent rendering just like templates had to reinvent iterating. And now, since we were outside of React with the v3, 2, and 1 APIs, we had to come up with these on change and on enter and on leave hooks. Because when you're not rendering these things, you don't get to use React's lifecycle. Component did mount, component did update, component will unmount. So we had to recreate them on our route components. So just like templates, we were instead of recreating JavaScript, we were instead of re-implementing JavaScript, React Router was implementing parts of React. Actually, a lot of React. People wanted to know what components were going to render before we rendered them. And so that's something that React decides, right? React figures out which components need to render on the page. So we had these functions to figure out what routes are going to render, what components are going to render. So we had kind of, once we saw this, we had on enter and on leave, and then someone sent a pull request and it got merged when route on change got added, and Michael and I were just sort of like, okay, we jumped the shark. What even is this thing anymore? Or people who have been really critical of React Router, and if you could hear the conversations between Michael and I in private, we really did not like it. Because we had learned React by now. This thing had been popular for 2 years, and lots of apps were using it, important part of the ecosystem, but we did not like the API. We didn't like that we were outside of React. We'd have these workshops, and we'd teach people about why we liked React, and we would show them all these patterns that you can use in React, and how it's composable, and how you can make your app easier to follow and understand. And then we'd get to the React Router section of our workshop and be like, it's just a little different than everything else we've been talking about. It was a very stark contrast when we would talk about React Router versus everything else. And so we were about to actually just give up. We're like, you know what? Lots of people are interested in taking this thing to the next level. Some people had some ideas on where to take it, and we're like, maybe let's just let people run with it and we'll move on and do something else. And we're standing at a hotel room door, or the elevator to go to a workshop or the airport or something, and I was like, you know, I have one last weird idea for an API for routing. And I'm like, let me mess with it and show it to you, and then let's see what we think about it. He's like, yeah, let's do it. So I hop on an airplane from Chicago to Salt Lake City, and in 3 hours, kind of like cranked out what became React Router version 4. I showed it to Michael, and he was like, I think I've got this in my heart forever. He said, this is the best work I've ever seen from you. He doesn't know this, but I printed it out, framed it. It's in my home office on the back wall, and then it says, dash Michael Jackson. And neighbors come over and they're like, what is this? The last 30 seconds was all lies, I'm sorry. I should frame it though. So what does React Router v4 look like, and why are we so excited about it? Here is this is a Create React app. Let's see if I missed anything. All right, so here is just a bare bones Create React app. Is that big enough in the back? We're good? We don't want React Router to feel like you got to change the way you think about React. Because that's how it was. If you had built a React app without URLs, and you're like, hey, let's bring in React Router, that would have been a wild endeavor to actually make it work, because React Router made you change everything about how you put your app together. We rendered your whole app. You had to give us, actually I think I've got it right here. You had to give us this big route hierarchy. Where are we? You'd give us all of these routes, and then And then in one version, we even had our own version of render. Like you didn't even call React render, you called React router render. But we still, even after that, we still owned a lot of rendering. So you gave us this big route config, and then we took over from there. So your whole app had to change just for React router, just to have URLs match up to your UI. With version 4, the philosophy is everything's a component. Everything renders. So everything is just like React. So let's do something here without React router. So I'm going to have some state, and I'm going to say my location is window.location.hash.subster01. So my location is going to be wherever we're at here, like a /about or users or things like that. And then we're going to say here, and component did mount. Let's listen to that thing. So we'll say window, add event listener. This is super low, so my accuracy will improve. Give me a moment. So whenever the hash changes, let's set some state. So we'll set our state, because this is what you do in React, right? Something happened, set some state. I'll just do the same thing right there. Okay, so now I've got this location thing. Let's make sure that it's working. Let's figure out where we at. This state location. And let's add some links into this thing. I guess I need list items too. So let's go to about. And how about Wolverine? Man, I started watching Logan. I didn't know the rating. And I'm kind of a G-rated guy. And I was like, what's happening? All right, here's going to be your favorite trivia, and a lot of you are going to be like, who is this guy? I have never seen an R-rated movie. Most of you don't believe that, but it's true. Unlike the framed picture of Michael's quote, that's not true. Anyway, but I did see the first 10 minutes of Logan. And it was a wild ride. That was enough for me. Okay, so let's see if we get our location in there. We got some links. Okay, we go to about. And I don't know how to use substring or subster. They're different, right? Okay. All right, so now I've got a location down here. I don't know how I feel about everything being centered, but we'll just let it slide. So now I can say, if I want to just kind of switch components that I'm rendering based on that state, I can say something like this.state.location equals about. I'll do a little and there. And then in here, I can put a component like about. Let's be more emphatic. Actually, that's not emphatic. That's emphatic. Do you remember when you were doing web development back in those years when EM came out and like you were crazy about that? We do not use I elements. I actually built an app once where my style sheet was like this. And then I just used I and B elements. It was cool. Even sent it to code review, and my coworker's like, what's wrong with this HTML? I don't need your EM. If you're not going to use I and B, those are semantic. Inline and block. Anyway, that is a true story. That's why you really shouldn't lie at all, huh? Because now I have to tell you, that one was true, that one was false. Everything from now on is going to be true. So if we're at Wolverine, then let's get a picture of Wolverine. Oh. Yeah, let's put that one on the wall. Let's just do an image in here. Oops. What? Copy image. Oh yeah, copy image address. There we go. Let's try that again. The things you learn while you're live coding in front of people. All right. So this ought to work, right? Oh, I got prettier going, and I don't want that. It's gonna. Okay. Back button works. I can reload. He is young there. So there's a router. So what does React router look like? Yarn add React router DOM. The DOM indicates that there's a native. So we've got React router native too. No animations yet built in, so nobody uses it, but it's ready. Ready for one of you to make some animations for it. Okay, so now I've got React router. Instead of managing this state by myself, I can actually just let React router do this for me. So I'm going to import hash router, link, and route, and React router, oops, DOM. And then React router says, hey, just wrap your whole thing in a hash router or a browser router. I'll talk about that right at the end. So this thing sets up that listener that I just deleted. So I deleted where it's listening to the hash change, and now this hash router is going to do it. And then it puts that location on context. And now, instead of these anchors, I do link to, and I can just go to about. I don't need those hash things. Link will do that for me. Now I can just switch which kind of router I'm using, and then it will automatically add that hash in there, so I don't have to go change my whole app if I switch the router. And then down here, these little things. So our old router used to take your whole route config and own your whole app, own all of rendering, own everything, which then on our end meant that we had to re-implement a lot of React. Now, since we're just components, you just say where you want to render something, where you want to match a path, and then render something right there. So here we can say, let's put a route here, and let's say that its path is about, and then when that matches, we want it to render this. Same thing here. Path equals Wolverine, and we want you to render that. See how they're just sort of if blocks? Let's save this. Works exactly like it used to. So these routes just render right there in place. If we wanted to match about somewhere else too, maybe up above here, maybe up in the header or something like that, say, hey, if we're on the about page, let's say about up there too. Or if we wanted a Wolverine up there, maybe not a picture of him this time. Let's do an H1. Wolverine. Can you see how that makes it really easy to make like breadcrumbs and sidebar navigation and that kind of stuff? When we owned rendering, we had to do weird stuff to open up spots for you to do these things. Just like templates have to open up API for you to do a loop or to call a function. Now that we're just components, just like React is just JavaScript, we don't get in your way anymore. You just render a component where you need it, and that's where it will be. What's really cool about this, and I'm going to close on this, is sometimes you don't know all of your routes. So before you had to basically know everything about your app right here. Up front, you have to say, okay, this is every possible route that I will ever be at. Check this out. So when I land on this page, let's squeeze in here, and I'm on a small screen, so I'm just at /web. This is a valid route. /web gives me an index of all of the links for the API for web. I can click on browser router, get a nice little animation. Here's the browser router, docs, and then we can come and look at this URL. We're up here at web API browser router. We come back. Okay, cool. Let's make this screen big. Now I'm going to come to just /web. It redirected me. Because on a big screen, I don't just want a bunch of blank space over here on the right. I want to actually send you somewhere. I got all that room. So I redirect you there. This is the really fun part. Because we're all just components, when the screen gets bigger, boop, it redirects you. I don't know what we call these. Responsive routes? Awesome. I'll take that. Let me show you the source code for that really quickly. And then I will end with a couple questions. So here are, not docs. Oh, I don't want that tree. This is all online. You can go check it all out. That component is called environment. Environment is like web, native, core. So here in the environment file, you can see that it says, all right, using these render props that Jared was showing us earlier, if this is a small screen, it's going to call back and this thing will be true. And then this bundle thing loads these JavaScript bundles dynamically just by rendering these components, and it calls back with whatever data is in that bundle. And then if I've got the data and it's a small screen, then I'll render the environment small. If it's not a small screen and I've got the data, then I'll render environment large. If I don't have either of those, I'm going to render loading. That's it. I just declared this is what the app should look like in these states. So let's come over and look at our environment large. It's got, or sorry, let's look at environment small first. Environment small is for a small screen. Let's find the route. So this thing says, match this path, an API path, match an example path, or match a guide. Otherwise, just keep on rendering this screen. And then when we click here, it matches a route. But over here, man, it's nice getting those flashes of Wolverine. I'm not going to change my desktop background, I think. Then we come up here and we do environment large. Check out the routes here. And it says, hey, we've got the API routes, we've got the example routes, we've got the guides route, just like the small screen, but now we have an extra one. We have a redirect component. So I didn't set up any listeners for when the screen size changes, right? I just rendered a small screen component, and then it declaratively told me, called back with if it was a small screen. And then I declared a bundle component to load the small screen or the large screen JavaScript bundle. I didn't have to call any methods to go and do that. I just rendered a component. And then when this screen changes sizes, I don't have to listen to that thing and then decide, okay, let's go load the bundle, and then let's change the URL. I didn't ever have to think about that interaction at all. All I did was declare my app in given states. So that's React Router version 4. That's why we made those changes. We wanted to quit being outside of React because we like to be in just JavaScript and we like to be in just React. And so React Router is just components. Thank you. I guess we'll do 2 questions. Or 0. Yeah.
You mentioned something about like you were gonna explain the difference between hash router and.
Oh.
Did you do that real quick?
Yeah, I said you're going to explain the difference between hash router and browser router. All right, so now my URLs are going to be nice and pretty. I don't know if you can see that. It's just now /about and it doesn't have the hash in there. Your server has to be configured for this to work. Your server basically has to have a wildcard at some root path, and then any request that comes in, it doesn't matter how much URL there is, it's got to send the same JavaScript file. So yeah, that's a difference. Basically, use browser router. Hash routers, yeah, there if you absolutely cannot control your server, I guess, which would be rough. Yeah.
What about a separate problem visually exclusive? Like, what if you don't have override or API? Like a secret link out.
So you're worried about ambiguous route paths both matching?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Very astute question. Yeah, so the question is, what if you've got a route path, let's say user, let's put the params in here. Match.params.user. So we're going to get a thing called match inside of here, and it's going to tell us stuff about the match. One of them is the parameter user. So maybe Wolverine is a user, and so is so am I. But then we also want /about to be the about page. Is this the question?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so right now, let's get rid of our weird stuff up here that's going to distract us. So right now, if I click on the about link, we get about, and when I click on Ryan, we get Ryan there, and then here we get Wolverine. Notice this about right here. Sorry, that's probably, I was getting confused, thinking that it wasn't doing what I expected. All right, param. Check that out. This one renders and this one renders. We've got this route matching, and so it renders, and then we've got this route matching, and so it renders. So you don't want that all the time. We want exclusive routing sometimes. So we want to switch between different routes. And so we have a component called switch. And so then the order becomes important. So what switch is going to do, swerth, actually swerth, switch as swerteth. Yeah. This is taking way, like normally these jokes shouldn't take that long. So the swerteth component, the switch component, picks between them. And it goes first. Whichever one matches first, it'll pick that one and then forget about everything under it. Good question. So along with that, we also have, you can just drop a final one down here and then say like, not found. So this also facilitates not found routes because it'll try to pick, can't find anything, so it'll render the last one. Just two. Okay.
Yep. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thanks.